Haven't you hated when people start things but they never finish it? Well, that's what I'm doing. I am getting right back to something that I haven't been doing in a while, but I really want to finish it. And for you guys, just in case that you actually want me to have a complete playlist. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, check the description box and I will put the playlist of Requiem of the Rose King and anime versus manga playlist. So you can go back to it if you don't know what I'm talking about in this video. But other than that, it's morning. We're going to get into it. Episode 16. You have to read a few pages to really see where episode 16 even starts. We have Buckingham and Richard discussing who's on their side and what they have to do in order for Richard to take the throne. Richard is concerned and worried about Catesby hating him for what he's done. Buckingham tries to reassure Richard that Catesby worships him, but Richard thinks he's only loyal to his father. So Buckingham just says, if he becomes a briar in our path to glory, I'll banish and cut him from it. In the manga, he simply says, if he turns out to be a thorn in your path, I will cut him to pieces myself. Continuing the manga, you'll see a little scene of Catesby getting a strawberry pie and thinking of Richard. This scene was in the very beginning of the episode. Moving on, we go to the Hastings and visiting Lady Elizabeth. Looks like she has a plan and is trying to seem innocent. In the manga, when she's talking about living in peace with her family, she's holding onto one of her sons. In the episode, it's just her, and there's a quick shot of her son and daughter off to the side with no faces and laziness with animation and weird since the daughter came out of nowhere. During this, we have Catesby wondering if he should report this to Richard. But this comes after Hastings and Elizabeth talk a little more. In the manga, Elizabeth says to Hastings, being in the convent has cleansed my soul. I have come to understand the sanctity of a noble heart and love beyond a life status and luxury. All lies. Back to the episode, Buckingham confronts Hastings, but for some reason, Catesby interfered, almost as if he was trying to cover for him. Buckingham immediately questions that he doesn't know Richard like he does. Buckingham says to Catesby, you're incapable of saving Richard. At this point, this is where we see they skipped a scene that it was in the manga. In the manga, we get to see Richard meeting up with the Bishop of Ely, or to be more accurate, seducing the bishop. He prepared a modest outfit for the occasion. He says this, obscene garments with pieces cut out or those that reveal the lines of the body are an affront to the Lord. They are the devil's work, inciting desire. At the end of chapter 46, we see where he confronts Hastings like he did in the episode. Moving on, Buckingham sees a mark on Richard. Then Richard says, it appears that the bishop acquired a taste for corruption. The bishop became forceful. You can only understand if you read the manga, since the episode only shows it as a memory with one picture. Going back to the manga, after giving away the pie that was originally for Richard, this leads to see the kids who got it and come up to thank Catesby. This leads to Buckingham saying, what he desires at present are not sweet treats and kindness. You cannot become a demon. Meaning he's willing to do any kind of dirty work to get things done. After that, we got caught up to the episode with the encounter between Buckingham and Richard. It's basically the same thing in the manga, except there is more movement to it. It was pretty static in the episode. Laziness and animation. Anyway, Buckingham is worried about the vow they made. Richard assures him that he hasn't broken any vow. He will not open his body to anyone other than Buckingham. He even allows him to check his body, even though Buckingham says that he trusts him. I love what Richard says, or in this case, thinks. What I want is the pain of the sin committed together, to simply burn the wound, this heat alone. I'm assuming the sin is the two men having sex or anybody having sexual interrelations with Richard's intersex body. Now, there's a lot of censoring in this next scene, as well as lazy animation. Buckingham allows Catesby to come in while they're still indecent. In the manga, you can clearly see they're still undressed and stuck together. In the episode, it was quick flashes, images with their clothes on. And they end up sitting close together, like a couple, and Buckingham had a sword hidden behind him. It was weird. The only thing that looked good and was unanimated, well, it was Catesby. Then we have Buckingham saying to Catesby, "From now on, take my orders as though they are Richard's." In the episode, he added, "For we are two halves of one whole." We're now in chapter 48 of volume 11. I wish to include this page from the manga. "The lightning illuminates our sins, but the Lord's eyes do not see what's beneath the cover of a secret pact." The secret pact is referring to Richard and Catesby, since he's supposed to be working for Hastings. If you watched my short about Requiem the Worst King, anime versus manga, you would have seen that I included this amazing picture, including Buckingham, Richard, and Catesby. It was basically a turning point for the story. Things were gonna start happening. At least they included this in the anime. Moving on, Bishop of Ely comes from the shadows. In the manga, Buckingham grabs him by the wrist. He wants to protect Richard from getting too close to him. It's understandable, considering what happened. The Bishop of Ely had a message. Apparently, Hastings and Queen Mother / Elizabeth are planning a service for King Edward V that would solidify Elizabeth's power if held. This is a declaration of war. In this episode, Richard also says, "This is God against the devil. The devil has the devil's way. I shall take what I want to make my stand." There are a couple of scenes that were cut from the episode that led to a canceled service to a news service for Richard. In the manga, Richard was seen with Lord Howard and Lord Northumberland, I don't know, leading to a conversation about God and fate. This too leads to Richard asking a wager. He wants them to wager with him. This is his way to get them on his side. He participates in this joust. Then he's thinking, fate is nothing more than human shackles. Fate can be sliced open with a bloody blade. He changed the outcome with his sword. Then we have Richard coming towards Buckingham at the same time. Richard was thinking, "That warmth, I thought even wishing for it was a sin. Now it's in the palm of my hand. Take what you want, by force." I think this refers to Richard being able to have some kind of comfort in Buckingham's arms. Back to the episode. Elizabeth recruits Richard's mom to get help since she's the one who truly despises him. She tells Elizabeth and her party Richard's secret. Rumors start spreading, and you can imagine what horrible things they have said. Then we have the witch trying to give Richard some kind of medicine, but he rejects it. Moving on to the scene with Bishop of Ely, Hastings, Buckingham, and Lord Stanley at the table. Richard comes in and is already questioning the Bishop of Ely if they enjoyed their one-on-one time together with strawberries. Richard sends him away to get strawberries, and Hastings excuses himself and to go away. Oh, somewhere. Eventually, Hastings comes back with knights to arrest Richard, especially after learning about his secret. Then Richard makes a speech. A cursed demon am I. Who was it that cursed me? My body changed. Gruesome, despicable magic warped into the ghastly thing it is now. Who is the actual fiend here? You all are the true demons infesting the court. Lastly, Catesby is reminded of how he failed Richard in the past, says, to me, you are like life itself. I won't abandon you. He's ready to strike Hastings down, and the episode ends with Catesby saying, I will be your sword. There are, of course, scenes from the manga that have been cut from the anime that led up to this point. For example, the confrontation between Richard and his mom, Cecily, and how Richard embraced being a demon with the help from Buckingham. Episode 17. As soon as you start volume 12, you can see that episode 17 starts the same. Richard showing people that Hastings is now dead. It was more graphic in the manga, with blood on the floor and blood on Richard's face, and Hastings' head could be seen. But the dialogue was different. In the anime, Richard says those that would sell their souls to demons are hell-bound. In the manga, he says, when you sell your soul to the devil, you go to hell. We don't get to see how Buckingham is caring for Richard's cursed arm or even the little interactions matter. Buckingham asks, does it hurt? Richard responds, I've received such wounds many times before on the battlefield. He's getting closer to Richard and comments on his fair skin with countless scars, then says, these are the marks of a king. I see it as his way of building Richard up. Now Lord Stanley is trying to jump ship and save his own skin. Then we have Buckingham confronting Queen Mother on how she tried to get Richard killed. Later on, it's revealed that Edward V, the Queen Elizabeth, had no right to the throne. Therefore, the brothers are imprisoned in the Tower of London. More stuff that was cut is what happens before they're imprisoned. The brother that was with the queen comes back to the palace when he finally reunites with his brother. Edward slaps him. His Majesty didn't care that Hastings is dead. You can see that being a ruler and having everyone call him His Majesty has gone to his head. Then there was a dinner where they talked about the coronation, how they're going to have some kind of hunt to celebrate. Back to the episode, Buckingham and Richard go off on their own to talk about the coronations, but then I see that they left out a part from the manga. Richard is in his head. He says, I never imagined I would have someone to hold me. Buckingham then says, once the time comes, we will no longer need to show proof of our covenant. The body of the king belongs to the nation. I'm assuming it refers to how they don't need to be intimate anymore. However, Richard thinks Buckingham is concerned about Jane's the witch, which is comments from earlier, which leads to Richard feeling desperate and makes him remember a terrifying night. They eventually reveals that he can't sleep without him. Then Buckingham says, you easily toy with my resolve until it breaks. Tell me what it is you desire. Richard wants him to be with him until morning. The manga did it better. In the manga, Buckingham says, just like that, you break my resolve. Our pact is not sex alone. Tell me what you want. The expressions, the emotions, the dialogue was amazing. Furthermore, Cecily is not giving up. She's still against Richard taking the throne, so she persuades the people by saying, take heed and do not crown a demon king. Therefore, Richard and Buckingham had to come up with a plan, or in this case, act out a little play to convince the citizens. Richard said these words: I will become your shield, your king. The weight of destiny is a burden that my body can bear. I, Richard, bearer of my father's name, shall become the light of this world. Their act definitely changed the people's minds, but there was once again a lot of scenes cut from the manga that led to Richard finally getting the crown. We miss Buckingham being by Richard's side until morning, and how that was when Buckingham was writing a script for Richard's speech. Appeal to the legitimacy of King Richard. We miss the arrival of Anne and Edward. He's basically telling them they'll be the ones to receive the crown. You would have seen some resistance from Anne and how Richard has always wanted the crown. But it was only Buckingham that believed he could do it. And once again, we miss more scenes between Richard and Buckingham. Richard is curious as to why Buckingham is the only one to choose him as king. But this time he's speechless and doesn't know the answer to that. Something else that was cut was the whole hunt. People were wearing masks, and this was when the brothers and other people planned to kill Richard. Now in volume 13, Richard is still doing his speech, and Buckingham is helping out with the performance. And of course, it looks beautiful, and you can see the details and the emotions. Then we go to the banquet to honor Richard III, who is now King of England. What he didn't expect was morality theater that was basically showing him the old Richard. For instance, Lucifer, who's supposed to be Richard, says, I envy those who are loved by God. Richard didn't waver, even though he admitted this was indeed Richard. Now it's time for bed. Richard told Buckingham that he has to sleep with Anne. You gotta keep up appearances. Unfortunately, easier said than done. Since he binds his chest, it's hard for him to be vulnerable, and since he's used to being himself with Buckingham. Episode 18. In chapter 58, this is where episode 18 begins. Richard misses Buckingham so much that he goes to his room, then exchange a few words with each other. The wording is pretty much the same, except they seem to be more intimate in the manga and ready to share a kiss. Then we have some kind of ruckus that makes them leave the room together, which Anne happens to see. Anne can't get the two of them together out of her mind. Catesby appears. Anne looks to Catesby for answers. She says, you know him better than anyone, Catesby. If he's hiding some kind of secret, you have to tell me. Eventually, we learn about the identity of the man who played Richard in the Morality Theater, Earl of Richmond. To his surprise, he ends up at the Devil's Paradise, where everyone is free to dance and be whoever they want to be. It looks like the Earl of Richmond is even more eager to take what Richard has. Back to Anne's situation. She ends up confronting Richard. She's wondering, why aren't they dressed in costumes like everyone else and at the Devil's Paradise? So she's using this opportunity to make Richard's secret come to light. She would dress as a man and he would dress as a woman. He was having doubts, but he had no choice since Anne was feeling suspicious. Luckily, he pulled it off, and the banquet was a success. Everyone thought he was a beautiful woman. Suddenly, a man dressed as a devil walked in, or at least that's what they described it as. It's just like a head on him and like a wildebeest or something. Immediately knew it was Buckingham. The warmth they shared was too familiar. At first, Buckingham tried to walk away since he didn't think it was actually Richard. But then Richard came running back to him, made sure to let him know that he was the person he was looking for. They just eventually ran off together, whoever they wanted, just for tonight. Now we're in chapter 60, as they are on horseback running into the forest trying to get to a place where no one knows them. Richard goes so fast that he ends up in the water. If you read the manga, you would know that they did it in the water. Censorship. Ugh. But also after that, ending up at a cottage where he used to spend, or where he spent the night with Henry. And it comes flashing back in his head. It's like, why am I thinking about him, comparing him to him? What makes it worse of how he compares him to Buckingham, Henry and Buckingham, Stay with me. Buckingham asks Richard to use his real name, not his title. And do you know what his name is? Henry Stafford. So that doesn't make it complicated, does it? And that is where I am going to end it. Honestly, I think episode 18 does a pretty good job with the pacing. It's just the lazy animation. They could have animated more scenes, but it was really easy to follow along in the manga. So I thought that's what made it. So they didn't put too much in one episode. Episode 18, peak. Favorite one. Anyway, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos in the future, because we have 2 more videos to finish. We're going to have 2 more videos to finish this series. So don't forget to check out the playlist in the description box below to catch up of what I've said in the past and, you know, the other manga stuff. Gosh, I need to rest. I'm Michaela. I will see you later. Bye.